What I want to highlight today is that our 1 million ounce open pit resource at Lake Crow is part of a 9.5 kilometre gold system. And I expect it will grow both along strike and at depth, as Sam Cash suggests on that covering slide. This means that we can build value by expanding the resource and at the same time expanding and further de-risking our development options. When the time is right, we can then develop on our terms, and that is our plan. We have arguably one of the best pre-development gold stories in Australia, but importantly, it is not yet reflected in the marketplace. I think that will soon change, and for reasons I can touch on as we go along. This slide here, you can see there's some gold in the pan. That was essentially our discovery hole at Lake Crow. You can see it's back 0765. That's 765 air core holes that we drilled through transported cover since IPO. It's only about hole number 60 odd at Lake Crow, because we kept the sequence. And it hit fine gold that Mr. Sam Cash says is a good sign that things will run deep, and that has certainly been the case here. What you can see on that slide there is a mineralised big shear zone, sulphide impregnated, otherwise known as a lode. It taps deep fluids from down there, and that basically that process is feeding the whole system. Now, the project sits in a Tier 1 location between two large gold deposits 100 kilometres east of Kalgoorlie. The open pit resource is high grade. It starts 5 metres from surface. 80% of it is indicated, which means that you can apply financials to it. After 236,000 metres, it is open in all directions, and that's very important. And that refers purely to RC and diamond drilling. Drilling outside the resource is limited mainly due to our early focus on de-risking an early open pit development option. Another key reason is simply the scale of the project, which I think a lot of people simply don't get yet. Now, that early development option, that hasn't gone away. And if the gold price cranks up, we will possibly review that. But in the meantime, we have laid a very important foundation for growth. We now understand the deposit very well, and it means we can do large-scale step-outs and find stuff, and that's been happening recently. Importantly, that open pit resource is part of a much larger system. We've had early success with our growth drilling. We've increased the gold system to over 9 kilometres, identifying new shallow gold in new areas, as we did back in 2015. We repeated the process in the second half of last year, and now we're following up with RC and diamond drilling. We've recently discovered high-grade lodes at depth, which have extended the overall length of high-grade mineralisation, I should say, sitting below the open pit resource, therefore not in it, to 2 kilometres. That is very material. Some of those individual lode systems are 1 kilometre long. Well, that's big. We own the project 100%. We've got a granted mining lease sitting inside a 600 square kilometre project with 40 kilometres of strike. That de-risking element you can see in that final bullet point, feasibility level metallurgy, no problems there, advanced enviro and hydro studies. So we've laid the foundation for growth, and now it's time to grow. We're 100 kilometres east of Kalgoorlie, as I mentioned. I thought it's probably timely to show you a slide from our initial ASX release announcing a new gold system from back in 2015, and put the resource on that ASX release slide. Now you can see that dashed blue line in the middle, that is now the 3.2 kilometre, 1 million ounce open pit resource. The signs there don't leap out at you is one of the key points. And we're drilling many targets which have a similar signature currently. Another interesting thing with this slide is, if you go back to that release, and it's an interesting read, we talk about two gold systems, associated, the central one, which is Bombora, and the one to the immediate east of it called the Claypan Shear Zone. We haven't got any RC or diamond holes in that yet, but that will soon change. The 1 million ounce resource, as I mentioned, is part of a 9-kilometre gold system. Because of our early focus in the central part of that gold system, we don't have much drilling outside it. But where we have, it has hit mineralisation, and many of those intersections are floating in space. So we're now following up on those, and because of the floating in space nature of the intersections that we've already hit, our expectation is further discovery. RC drilling is currently in progress north of the crescent zone that you can see up the north, which in essence is another discovery and basically supports the notion of camp-scale gold potential. We're following up some interesting looking mineralisation to the north of that over 2 kilometres. What you're seeing here on this slide is 10% of the project. This is an interesting slide. Firstly, it shows you what 1 million ounces in open pit resource looks like. Now the drilling, a couple of things I want to stress here without going into too much detail. There's a harbour ridge shown to scale. So this thing is quite large and it's easy to forget that. The drilling below it is very limited. And what we're showing here is essentially all the diamond holes. There's not many holes there, but the holes that are underneath that open pit resource have hit a lot of high-grade mineralisation that is not in the resource. We have recently identified some new mineralisation and extended that strike length of high-grade mineralisation. You can see those as red dots. Assays are pending. They're not far away. So they'll be coming out very soon. You can see here that our approach generally is to drill aggressively, especially when you find things. And we have been finding things. We've had at least one discovery each quarter for the last 4 years. But that also says something about the deposit. It is not a typical, and it's taken a while for the market to form a view. The jury's been out, so to speak, as a phrase I heard earlier. It has been out on this deposit. We've got 3 lode orientations, and it took a while for the market to get their head around it. Do they join up? And then part of the reason we drilled so aggressively into this early shallow resource is to form an understanding. So we formed that understanding. It's reflected in that block, that wireframe I just showed you, and now we are doing wide space step outs and hitting stuff. If you were to discover a golden mile today, this is what the discovery pattern would look like. The best geological analogy is the golden mile. Multiple lodes in a quartz diorite over a large area. Company snapshot. The people running the company are long-term mining industry professionals with diverse backgrounds, well regarded, and importantly are aligned with shareholders. If the shareholders have pain, we have pain, and we deliberately seek growth and obviously work in the best interest of shareholders. The share register is quite tight. Despite all that drilling, there's only 231 million shares issued. You can see from that we are well funded. Our IPO was designed around looking for new gold systems under thin cover. The images you see here are Lake Crow. Firstly, the salt lake on the left, which is when the photo was taken, was dry, and The remainder is like the image on the right. No outcrop, so we have to drill those air core holes in order to position the RC holes. As I mentioned, the best geological analogy is the Golden Mile, 3 lode orientations in an iron-rich part of the dolerite over a large area. Strata-bound, in other words. In the iron, the shear zones hit the iron-rich part of the dolerite, and I'll show you an image of that shortly, and that's where the gold drops out. The scale, again, Kalgoorlie Super Pit on the right, shown at the same scale as the image on the left. Again, it's a reminder that this thing has size. It is the dominant mineralisation style in Western Australia, so there's nothing unusual about the deposit mineralisation style. I said this is a high-grade deposit, and I mean it. We're getting high-grade stuff at surface, and we're getting high-grade stuff at depth. The pattern is the same. The resource is 1.4 grams because it's an open pit resource. It's designed to maximise profit in an open pit situation. The high grade gives us mining optionality. And as I said, it starts within 5 metres of surface, and that is a key positive in any development. The blue stuff is inferred mineralisation. The orange stuff is indicated mineralisation. The inferred mineralisation is only partially drilled out. Anything outside those two colours, and there's quite a few hits there, is not in the resource. This is one more for the technicals in the audience. You can see a surface plan on the left, long section on the right. Now those purple bits are where the steep shears intersect the iron-rich part of the dolerite, shown in green in the middle. The green in the middle correlates with our iron-rich dolerite, and by the way, it is the second most fractionated dolerite after the Golden Mile in Western Australia, so this is rare. The steep lodes set up linking west and flat lodes. It is complex, like the Golden Mile, but it is regular, and that is the key thing in terms of mining. And I think the market has taken a while to form a view on that. That wireframe that I showed you earlier has only been out there for a couple of weeks. 2020 growth plans running through quite quickly because we've only got a couple of minutes left. The following themes: shallow gold along strike. Again, a reminder that we have a lot of intersections outside the main resource and sitting in a very large project. So that gives us an expectation of discovery. I'm showing you some of the targets and specifically some of the size of some of the targets in the bottom part to give you a feel. So this is a large project. This slide shows the crescent mineralisation, some very significant zones there, not in the resource. But it also shows you some of the results from the Kopai area where we're currently drilling, and you'll hear more about that in due course. This slide highlights the mineralisation to the south, wide-spaced hits floating in space. Some very significant intersections shown there as well. This is a bit of an overview. Now this is looking sideways to the deposit. Again, you can see things in there growing, and we expect that pattern to continue. This is a closer look at the high-grade lodes that we think are feeding the system. We're seeing consistent high grades in areas like the Tura lode with visible gold, not uncommon. Some of the flat lodes, interesting here, these are the ones we knew about before hitting some new stuff recently. What I can see here is consistent high grade in a regular structure. And this image is designed to show what we think is happening at depth. We're not showing all the flat lodes because we don't know about them all yet. We are currently doing deep drilling on 300 metre wide spacings in order to be able to adequately plan the resource drilling at depth. So you can see some of the steep shears hitting there, shown as ribbons. That's where the steep lodes intersect the iron-rich part of the dolerite. Regional discovery, this area on the left, that extends north of the Kopai area. We found some lithium while we're looking for gold, which is quite interesting, some nice numbers there. The metallurgy, as I mentioned, is at feasibility level. So in summary, we've got a rare discovery. We set up an early de-risking platform for growth to develop that understanding, to be in a situation where if the gold price takes off, we can do something about it. But there's no point setting expectations when you can see this thing growing quickly, and that's what I'm seeing. So our focus on 2020 is on growth, as I outlined, and we're going to keep on drilling, but be mindful of that de-risk background that we've set up with a view to keep on improving it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. A question that's been put to us is, do you have any idea when you might have a resource upgrade, or are you just going to work that out as the drilling dictates?
We're obliged to work it out as the drilling dictates. We're doing two types of drilling at the moment. We're doing discovery style drilling with the RC rig, and we have got 2 diamond rigs doing deep step out / framework holes on a 300 metre wide spacing. Some of those holes will be used, they are hitting stuff and will be used for the resource, but we are essentially drilling those in order to design what the resource drilling program is going to look like. So until we know those, until things settle down there, I don't know.
And one other question that came through was, are you really focusing purely on inventory growth at the moment? Do you think that's where the best upside for shareholders is at, or are you still prepared to have a look at a development scenario?
The inventory growth expands our development options and de-risks them. But we have that de-risk base, if you like. And as I said, if that gold price takes off, I think the sensible thing will be to keep a close eye on it. But the important thing is we've set up that de-risk base intentionally to cover situations like this.